Last week, I reviewed Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and needless to say, I was disappointed. It's probably the most frustrated I've been walking out of a movie theater maybe ever, and definitely the most frustrated I've been walking out of a movie in at least the last 20 years, and that's not an exaggeration. I was deeply frustrated by how I felt Lucasfilm and Disney treated a revered and one of the most important and iconic franchises in the history of cinema, and I was really upset with how that movie came out. And I think Disney should be embarrassed. And my opinion on that film hasn't changed. 1 week later, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. This is the first half of what will be the final two movies in the current modern incarnation of Mission Impossible. And it's the complete opposite. This movie is everything I wanted and then some. And let's talk about it. Thank you so much for checking out the review. Before we get started, click on that red subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you know whenever I post a new piece of content. Okay, the Mission Impossible series has been running a long time, since the mid-90s in fact. And these movies have gotten a little bit better, and then there's been a noticeable jump in quality since Christopher McQuarrie took over with Rogue Nation. The original Mission Impossible, Brian De Palma, really good movie. Definitely a different feel. Felt a lot more like the show, and I like it. I like the original Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible 2 is kind of like the black swan of the films. It's very different. It's super heavy on the action. The story is dumb. It's over the top. It's John Woo at his finest, and I kind of love that movie, even though it's a mess. 3 is J.J. Abrams at his best and worst. I don't think that movie has aged particularly well. I watched it a couple weeks ago, and it's okay. 4 is very much a Brad Bird movie. He's the director that's famous for making some great animated movies like The Iron Giant, Ratatouille, and The Incredibles films. He's really a big Pixar guy, and I like that movie. And that's the one where the stunts really took off, right? Tom Cruise running down the side of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. And then in Rogue Nation, he does the underwater swim where he's holding his breath for a long time. In Fallout, that movie has the bonkers stunts at the end. He's flying a helicopter. It's crazy. And then in this movie, he has, the big famous jump into he opens the parachute and it's crazy, right? And this movie is more of that, except it finally really nails the story and the characters and the action. I feel like this is the first Mission Impossible movie where everything has come together and it's all perfect. It's about 2 hours and 40 minutes, and that's long, but this movie never feels long. I was in all the way the entire time. And I didn't check out at any second of this movie. I loved it from the very beginning to the very end. And instead of having a story about, another nuclear bomb or a virus being unleashed on the world, this one feels very different. It embraces the idea of technology running amok and what happens when an AI system goes completely rogue. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the way all of that is handled is basically perfect. If you look at what's happening with, Midjourney and ChatGPT and OpenAI, and you look at the end game of where that could end up if you unleash something like that on the internet where it can write its own code and do social engineering, all of that is tackled in this movie, and it's handled extremely well, and it feels very modern. And the performances are all great, and the script is awesome, and it's really funny when it needs to be, and the villain is incredible, and I love this movie. I love this movie. This is probably the best action movie I've seen in the last decade, if not the last 20 years. Really, I mean that. This is a phenomenal action movie, and I don't want people to go into it and be overhyped, but I really genuinely was blown away by this movie from top to bottom. Everything about it. And what Cruise deserves a lot of credit for is, one, never compromising on these movies and making movies that are meant for the big screen and doing all the stunts himself. I think that goes a long way. And those stunts, as amazing as they are and as much value as they add to these movies, they never overshadow the entire film. This isn't just a string of those types of sequences cobbled together and then called a movie. It's a incredible cohesive story in which there are some great action set pieces with stunts involved in them. And I can't stress enough how good this film is. The performances are great. I love seeing Simon Pegg and Ving Rhames and Rebecca Ferguson in these roles and really embracing it. And yeah, a lot of these production houses, a lot of these movie studios have taken the last movie of a series and split it in two. This is the first one where I think the first movie has been a 10 out of 10. And I'm so excited to see what this movie does next. You could say this ends on a cliffhanger. I think it's not. It's not as much of a cliffhanger as I was worried about it being. It also ties really well into the first film. And what I love too is we're finally getting a glimpse into what Ethan Hunt's life was, like what led him to become a part of the IMF. That has never really been talked about in these movies. The first movie starts off, he's an IMF agent. We've never been told kind of what happened before that to get him into the IMF. And it looks like they're diving headfirst into that in these two films. They tackled a little bit of it here, and it seems like they're going to hit it really hard in the second movie. And the stakes here are as high as they've ever been. And it's just a smart, big, fun action movie that's not dumb. There are big, dumb action movies, and there are big, smart action movies, and this is a big, smart one. It's been a while since we've seen something like this. It's been a while since we've seen a perfect 10 out of 10 action movie that gets every single beat right from beginning to end, and I couldn't be more happy. I could not be more happy. This is the complete opposite of what Disney did with Indiana Jones. This is a studio taking itself seriously and understanding a beloved franchise and doing it right. And getting it right and taking the time to do exactly what they need to do to make a masterpiece. And I think this movie is incredible. And I can't wait for Dead Reckoning Part 2. Fantastic job all around. See this movie in the theater. If you don't, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. Thank you so much for checking out this review. I love the hell out of this movie. It's so good. If you liked the review, found it helpful, I hope you consider subscribing. You can also follow me on at HometownZero on Instagram, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 9 a.m.